Welcome back to the Real Room. I'm your host, Lucretia Mitchell. This is a space where truth doesn't have to shout to be heard, where curiosity is honored, and where we lay down ego to pick up empathy. On this episode, our guest is someone who walks the walk daily. He is a man of fraternity and faith, a student of life, and a believer in grace over chaos. He's built for the community, built for connection, and built to make others feel seen and valued. Today, we're leaning into the power of being open to learn, to unlearn, to listen, and to grow. Because maybe, just maybe, if we choose understanding over assumption, this world wouldn't be so heavy. Let's get into it. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
No problem. Thank you for being here. I want
That's
you
my
to
privilege.
introduce yourself.
Okay, so my name is, so I'll give you a little backdrop.
Yeah.
I was born Mario McCottrell. That's my born name. Through the transition of my faith and different things like that, I went into Mario X for a while. And then I was blessed with the holy name from my tribe, the Fulani people of Africa. And they named me Ibrahim. So Ibrahim is my first name.
Okay.
But a lot of my friends in Langston couldn't really grasp it. Even I couldn't grasp it when I first got it. So we settled on my last name. So my last name is Jalo.
Yeah.
And that's how I identify myself as Jalo.
Well, again, thank you for being here. We always start with a this or that. And
Okay.
so I'm going to give you some options and you
Cool.
pick which one. Are you a reader or a podcast watcher or
reader.
listener? Okay,
Definitely
so
a reader, right.
Okay, reader.
Somebody told me a long time ago that if you read, your conversation becomes better, your comprehension becomes better because your eyes done seen so many words that it broadens your vocabulary. So I've always been an avid reader.
Okay.
Yeah.
Favorite book right now?
Favorite book, the Quran.
Okay.
The Holy Quran is my favorite.
Let's talk about that. So
Okay.
we had a conversation before this,
Okay.
and I told you, I believe in God, Jesus, all of the things, right? And I told you I've never read the Quran. For anybody out there, for you, how has the Quran shaped you? What does it truly mean to you, and when it comes to your faith?
Right. So I identify, and I'm a Muslim,
Mm-hmm.
and I wasn't looking for Islam. I wasn't a person that was dibbing and dabbing into different religions trying to find truth because my soul was uneasy or nothing like that.
Yeah.
My grandmother was apostolic, and so I grew up with apostolic roots, and it did me very well. But my father was Rastafarian, if you're familiar with the Rastas. So his culture, when he came around, he was more self-identified. He was very disciplined, self-oriented, and then the nappy hair. I just kind of fell in love with it. And so that kind of helped me out a little bit. But once I got older and I started studying the Quran, it made life and it made the answers to life so simple for me. And I think religion for religion is a medicine, and some of us are sick in certain ways. And so it gave me the proper dosage that I needed to make myself better. And without even me knowing it, I started realizing the discipline was better within myself. I started caring more about my community.
Yeah.
I started caring more about my history, how I treated my family, and the role of a man in the community. And so I think the Quran has been, it's been what it says it is. It's a guide for those who believe.
Yeah.
And so I study it every day.
That's amazing to me. It is one that I've always been intrigued by, always been interested, just because, listening to the different teachings and what people have said, I've always been like, oh, I'm going to pick that up one day.
Yeah.
But then there's also been this thing, right? And I feel like we talked about this too. There's also been this thing of, well, if I do that,
Right.
then I'm not loyal to my faith
Yeah, for
or
sure.
to what I believe, right?
Absolutely.
And so what would you say to someone that is thinking about, learning about other faiths and other disciplines in a
Right.
sense?
And I would, all of those different steps that you just mentioned, I went through all of those. And what I decided to do is I decided to first study in secret. What I meant by that is I didn't want nobody trying to throw a rock in the well I was trying
Yeah.
to drink out of.
Yeah.
So I would close my door in college, and then I would just read. And then I do this even today. I write down the commentary of what I read. So if I'm reading scripture or if I'm reading something from the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, in my personal time, I'll sit back, I'll think on what they said, and then I'll write my own commentary.
Mhm.
And it helps me to comprehend things better, if that
Yeah.
makes any sense. But anybody that's thinking about studying it, Islam, Islam is a beautiful it's a beautiful religion. We're actually taught that it is not a religion. It's actually the nature of us.
Right.
But we are so far away from what we used to be that we are practicing it. So we are learning how to submit ourselves. And so, like I said, it's been great. And I think, if I had a good book on health, I'd give it to you.
Yeah.
If I had a good book on finances, I would give it to you. And if
Yeah.
I got a book that could help you, that can guide you in the spiritual world, then there's no hesitation that I would lend that to you as well. And for anyone that think that it would challenge their current faith system, I would say not. Sometimes that's just us talking to ourselves in our
Yeah.
own heads. But I think it's a great opportunity to read, and I read other things as well. And what it does is it just all truth will align with each other.
Hmm.
So you'll see that it has a lot in common with what you probably already believe.
Yeah.
For sure.
No, that's good. You said all truth will align
Mm-hmm.
with itself. And
Yeah.
I love that. One thing for me when I decided to invite you
Okay.
to the real room, right? It was this conversation with myself that it's okay, right, to learn about other faiths, learn
Mhm.
about other things that are outside the norm for what you believe and
Mhm.
what you stand 10 toes down on,
Right.
right?
Right.
And so we talked about that and
Mhm.
what that looks like. And there's been moments in your life
Yeah.
where you have had to cross those lines,
Mhm.
right, of what you believe to connect with other people. And I think
Right.
that's so important for us to be okay with saying, you know what? People are going to be people. I may
Right.
not be able to change what they think or what they believe, right? But at least if I can have an understanding of why they believe what they believe, then maybe it will help me to embrace and or connect with them a little bit more. Talk about your most recent I guess, journey with some of the people or things that you have done to go outside of your necessarily what you believe or have believed about somebody.
Right. I think the most recent, I took a trip to Canada.
Mhm.
I was doing some fraternal work over there. And now when I meet people, I'm really tuned into who they are so that I can try to see the world the way that they see it. And sometimes you only know what you know. And
Yeah.
if I only lended myself to what was available in my community or what I learned in college, that's very small to the world that's around us. And I think me having that opportunity to travel to Africa,
Mm,
to sit in homes of people that didn't speak English, that would never see the sun from where I see it,
mm,
and just really soak that in. It just really made me just appreciate everyone. I think there's no insignificant soul.
yeah.
And so I just try to meet people where they are. And like I said, when I was in Canada, I met some good brothers, very good brothers, and we genuinely had an interest in each other.
Yeah.
I didn't have to change who I was to feel comfortable around them, and I would not ask that of them as well.
Right.
You know, I'm a black man born in America, have certain family traditions and things that I like, but we had something in common and we focused on that.
Yeah.
And it was fraternalism, it was truth, it was righteousness on the principles that we stand on. And we had a great time. And I felt like I extended myself to them. And
Yeah.
I look forward to seeing them every time I do get a chance to travel.
Good,
Yeah.
good. What is the biggest misconception about the Muslim faith?
The biggest misconception about the Muslim faith, I think that when you become Muslim, you trade in your God for another God.
Mm,
And that's absolutely not true. The God of the Bible is the God of the Quran. So for me, and this is just from my perspective, when I studied Islam, it didn't tell me to throw away everything else I had. So I've learned to actually respect whatever a person believed that got them to me in the conversation in one piece.
mhm, mhm.
And so Islam has misconceptions because there is an institution and there is a media behind it that gives you a negative connotation about what we believe. And we're simply just people of peace. And we think freedom, justice, and equality should be afforded to every human being, regardless of creed, class, color, race, social economics, all of that. But it also gives us a responsibility that you cannot sit on the sidelines of life and watch people be mistreated, and that you have an obligation to go into seek after those who are lost and bring them knowledge and truth and help them to get better. And I think for the Nation of Islam, that's who that's the core of why I am
Yeah.
what I am today and why I do what I do.
Yeah.
Without that, I don't think that I would have much significance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you believe your assignment is in this life?
My assignment in this life is to help. My assignment in life is to first submit myself to God.
Mm-hmm.
And in doing that, is to help more, to narrow it down, is to be a helper to the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan.
Mm-hmm.
I think that he is divinely sent to us. He's a man of morals and character. And many religious communities, they have the literature, but you don't have a living person that's an example of it.
Mm-hmm.
And for that, he's been the example. So he's been a father for many of us that were in prisons, many of us that were on drugs, many of us that had separated ourselves from our family after we got a little bit of
Mm-hmm.
education. So I study him intensely and I listen to him. And I think that with the work that he's done in his 92 years
Yeah.
and what he means to me and what he means to my religion, that there's nothing on this planet that I would rather do than to use everything that I have to help Allah by helping him to help us all.
Got you.
Yeah.
If you don't mind,
Yeah.
I'm going to go here.
Let's go.
Because for me, when you say that about
Mhm.
him, right?
Mhm.
As a Christian,
Sure.
it's like, okay, for us, we're taught don't worship any other gods.
Sure.
But when you say that
Mhm.
about the Honorable
Mr.
Louis
Farrakhan.
Farrakhan,
Mhm.
right? It's almost like you guys worship him in a
Right.
sense. What would you say to someone that is thinking that?
Right. And that's, I think a lot of times when people say that, they just don't see it the way that I'm seeing it in a certain particular light.
Okay.
Right.
Break that down for me.
So you have different religious communities, you all follow Jesus.
Right.
If you don't mind me using that
Yeah.
as an example,
Yeah.
right? You got people that follow Moses, but all of these men are just guides.
Mm.
We don't worship the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan at all. And he's done many lectures that said if we made the mistake of doing that, that's a sign of ignorance.
Right.
That we don't do that. He is he is the one that's in front of us to be the guy. He's our teacher. But all our praises are due to Allah. And we know without Allah, he wouldn't be able to do what it is that he's doing.
Yeah.
But he is the one that's, that we believe that's sent to us to guide the way.
Yeah.
Some of us have, we know, for example, I'm only 37 years old. There's very much I know about a lot of things. But if God has blessed us and sent us someone to deliver the message and to live a moral and righteous life, to be the example, then why would I move around somebody like that? I've had those conversations with myself, but I don't worship the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. He's a helper to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and I'm trying to be a helper to him.
Yeah.
And all that means is that, and if I could say this humbly, that with as much as he's done for us, with me being in Oklahoma, I want to make sure that I can help him as relate to where I am. And the first way I can help him is to take care of myself, take care of my wife, my children, educate the brothers that are around me, treat people how I want to be treated, and just be righteous, and defend the poor and the downtrodden, and educate the orphan and the imprisoned.
Yeah.
So no, I don't worship the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. He's first a brother, but I do think that he's if I can humbly say this, he is a man of God.
Yeah.
And it's the same for when people do recognitions for pastors. They honor their pastor. This is, they give honors to their pastors.
Right.
And I give my honor and respect to the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan the same way.
Thank you for breaking that down. That was so good. And while you said that, I did kind of look up a few things because I was like, it's funny. I feel like Big Brother algorithm, whatever it is, it's crazy because after we talked, so much stuff started popping up about the Honorable Louis Farrakhan, right? And this is a few quotes that I had, and I respect him more than I could possibly eloquently say on this podcast, right? From him to, all the other leaders that we've had. But I found a few quotes that I just want to ask you a few questions about, right? And one of them, Minister Farrakhan emphasizes the importance of self-acceptance and discovering one's divine purpose, reflecting on their journeys. How do we navigate shedding societal titles to truly embrace our authentic selves?
Right.
right?
Yeah.
And so one of the quotes that he had was there and this is a quote, there really can be no peace without justice. There can be no justice without truth, and there can be no truth unless someone rises up to tell the truth. My question to you is, you've always been someone who listens deeply, but also speaks truth with grace in a world that often punishes honesty, especially for people that look like us.
Hmm.
How have you found the courage to rise up and tell the truth, even when it's uncomfortable?
I would say, they did that to all the prophets.
Mm.
I'm not
Mhm.
saying, and I would never put myself in a position to say that I'm in that line. Absolutely not. But even in the day-to-day trials that I undergo, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan has taught us how to look at problems appropriately. You
Mhm.
know,
Mhm.
um, a trial and the suffering of a consequence of an action, they don't feel the same.
Mm.
And so when I go through things in life, I sit back and look, is this something that Allah is trying to purify me of? Because one thing the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan says is this, is that when you say that you stand on truth and that you're willing to fight for it, do you think it's not going to come with problems?
Mm.
The Holy Quran also says, do you think that you um, will not be challenged on what you say that you believe?
Yeah.
And so I think really just looking at the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, and I'm gonna keep emphasizing it because I'm not ashamed to say that I found a mentor that I can model myself after. He's went through a lot of different trials. I haven't had publications printed on me of people calling me anti-Semitic.
Right.
I haven't had people outside of my convention saying death to Farrakhan. I haven't had that. I haven't been poisoned and things like
Mhm.
that, like he has. So I just know that what I'm striving to do, what we are striving to do as Muslims, I know that it's righteous, and God protects us with that.
Yeah.
And we also believe that we fight with those that fight with us. So we fight with truth, but it's an honorable life to live, and I'm deeply passionate about it. And I undergo my trials. I have my test, but I seek refuge in Allah. And when I do that, then I know that I'll get through it, you
Yeah.
know.
I think everybody, just hearing what you're saying, everybody is going to be faced with trials and
True.
tribulations. There are going to be things that I truly believe for me, and what I believe
Hmm.
is that in order for me to be the best version of myself that God wants me to be, right?
Hmm.
I'm going to be stretched. I'm going to
Yeah.
be challenged.
Yeah.
I'm going to be persecuted
Hmm.
because, again, for me, Jesus was too,
Right.
right?
Exactly.
And so, who am I not to think, or who am I to think that it's not going to happen to
Right.
me, right? And so I think it's important as a people, regardless of what you believe, know that no matter what, you're going to be stretched and you're going to be pushed, because those are opportunities for us to learn and
Hmm.
grow so that we can be the best versions of ourselves that we can possibly be.
Mr. Farrakhan said, if you don't want problems, then you don't want life,
Yeah.
because it comes with it.
Yeah.
But what school have I can't recall a school that had a class on how to deal with problems of life.
Yeah.
And a lot of that are dealing with low self-esteem and not knowing where you're going. You Sometimes our problem is how we see our problems,
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm learning to look at the challenges of life, not I look at them as hurdles, something to get over. If, for example, you cannot say that you want to uh, raise a civilization of black people and think you're not going to run into issues.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
you're going to run into problems, severe problems, if I could
Yeah.
be honest with you. But you got to love them more than they hate themselves. And so, when I see a mother at the bus stop with all of her children and she had to take the cart from Walmart to the bus stop,
Yeah.
you know, I don't know if we go door to door with the
Mm-hmm.
newspaper.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So when we do that, when you knock on that door and that
Mm-hmm.
person open that door, you really get to see the conditions that people are living in.
Yeah.
You're not trying to trespass on what they have, but you see a mother with no furniture,
Yeah.
children with no
Mm-hmm.
father, or you see children with no adults. So when we get back home, when we sit at the table, my heart aches for that, and then
Yeah.
I go and look for guidance in our teachings to help them
Yeah.
through that, because that's just that's a part of what we've been assigned to do. And so, yeah, it's challenging, but again, I think I've heard this saying, every generation self-corrects.
Mm-hmm.
So as I kind of matured, through some of the foolishness that even existed in my life, I look at it and I say that I just didn't have knowledge.
Yeah.
And so that's why, you know, with a lot of the things that I do, I put myself in connection with other men that can share where they've been in life and how they've been able to maintain things. And I use that as an example. So yeah, hard trials are necessary to establish truth.
Mm.
And speaking to the men specifically, you got to go through it. And that's why I think brotherhood is so important,
Yeah.
that you have men that you can lean on for understanding and stuff to sharpen your steel
Mhm.
to get through things. And so that's been one of the greatest things that I have, is I have brotherhood,
Yeah.
in a lot of different areas, but definitely for sure.
Listen, the way that y'all move,
Mhm.
y'all sharp suits and
Yeah.
all, I'd be like, look at them. I love
Yeah.
it. I just love what you all represent,
Yeah.
and how you do give back. I think there's a lot of misconceptions when it does come to
For sure.
just what y'all do and what y'all
Yeah.
stand for. And so I appreciate you just kind of breaking that down. But let's lead into just brotherhood,
Sure.
right? When we talk about brotherhood, we talk about fraternities.
Mhm.
What does that mean to you in your life right now? How important is that?
Right. So brotherhood for me is everything. In Islam, we say that you've passed into death, into life when you love the brotherhood.
Mm,
you know. And so for me, I mean, that's one of my greatest attributes. Many of the people in my personal life know that I'm a member. I don't even know how many
yeah.
organizations that I belong to, but I'm in a lot of them. And it is probably the greatest decision that I made,
Mhm.
because I get to share myself with people
Yeah.
and I get to learn from them. And some people use fraternity as a means to get out of the house and socialize a little bit. For me, fraternity is spirit work.
Mm,
The teachings that I get from all of the different orders, they uh, they add to my civilization, if that makes any
mhm,
sense.
mhm.
None of the things that I'm in, or none of the orders that I'm in, can take ownership of the attributes that they give, because all of the attributes, friendship, love, truth, justice, harmony, all of that's from Allah.
Yeah.
you know but we have them because I think all of these organizations are tools to help man to civilize himself, and it
Mhm.
gives us a basis to where we're able to do it despite all of the social differences that we have, that we meet each other
Yeah.
on a particular level, and we deal with each other in a way that helps to increase our civilization. And a lot of people don't know that early in our it's a good book called What a Mighty Power We Could Be.
Okay.
I highly recommend it. But it talks about fraternalism, and you were either a sharecropper,
Mm.
right? A
Mhm.
preacher, or a mason,
Mm.
right? Because masonry was one of the first institutions that gave us a title when the world didn't give us one.
Hmm.
When doors were closed, we could go into the barn with these books and these aprons and call you worthy brother this,
Mm.
a worthy brother that. So when I started researching the history, I know it's a lot of misconceptions about it, but when I started researching the history, a lot of us, this is where we first got our opportunity at leadership,
Yeah.
you know, and we use that also for social support. Like, for example, there was no such thing as social security.
Mhm.
If you were working, or if your husband was working
Mhm.
in, at that time, and he was injured,
Mhm.
you all wouldn't have.
Mhm.
But with these lodges, what they did was the brothers would pool their resources, that if one of us got sick, the lodge would take care of him.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we don't see as much of that now with all of the social securities that we have now.
Mhm.
But that's what it was for. They
Yeah.
bought land so that they could lay together in death. And I just love it. I don't think that, for example, like with some of these orders, I'm just getting introduced. This is my family, the Grand United Order of Odd Fellows,
Mhm.
founded in 1843. When I'm reading the history, these are my fathers, these are my grandfathers.
Yeah.
These were men in the community that actually, they didn't have a big title. Some of them don't even got headstones,
Mm.
but they did for the people in that community.
Mm.
And so when I read it, I'm just becoming more enlightened to the men that came before me. And if anything, with me just being righteous and wearing the pen and speaking life to power, I keep the order alive, and I keep something that helped them. I keep it moving forward. So I
Yeah.
think that's what it means to me.
You just spoke on just community and the connectiveness of
Hmm.
people. How important, especially in today's society, you look at all the things going on, right? And how divided we are. What will it take for us to really establish more of a community feeling? What kind of work does that look like?
Well, it starts at home. Charity starts at
Mm,
home. Really, it starts with us. When the minister did the Million Man March,
mm-hmm.
it was really a call for a million men to atone for the responsibilities that we neglected.
Yeah.
You know, and so I would say it just starts at home with me being attentive to my children and understanding that the world that I raised them in is the world that they're going to accept.
Yeah.
So being intentional about raising my children, learning how to be a husband,
Mm-hmm.
and that's something that is a everyday thing that you have to learn because you're taking two different individuals that grew up two different ways with two different sets of
Yeah.
cultures, and you're trying to bring that under one umbrella. And I think that it starts at home, and then paying attention to what's going on around your community. And one time I had a tough conversation with my wife, and I was letting her know that some of us men that have a desire to change our communities and our world, that it's tough, because a lot of women they would be afraid of him not making it home,
Mm-hmm.
or someone will hurt you or things like that. But it's like we can't not let the work get done. So we got to overcome that fear. So I would implore any man in this community, become concerned about the local matters, and then use your life example and use the resources that you have to reach these young men and young women, because that's the future, really,
Yeah.
right? That's the future, so that we can make it better. So I think it really I think everybody needs to get involved in some level of community involvement.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be anything big. We do have some organizations that's been around for a while, but you don't need permission to do right. So just see a problem, and if you have a solution, apply the solution and get a better outcome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it. For me, my first ministry is my family, right?
Gotcha.
Like, if I'm not taking care of home, but
Mm.
yet I'm out here doing all the things you're talking about, serving
Mhm.
the community, then I feel like I'm a hypocrite, right?
Yeah.
And so I think there is definitely I hate to say balance, but there is our family should be
Yeah.
priority, right?
Mhm.
And so what does that look like? Have you personally ever had to say to someone, "Hey, listen, you moving a little bit different and a
Mhm.
little bit wrong because I'm noticing that home is not taken care
Yeah.
of, but you out here." What does
Yeah.
that look like with correcting?
Yeah, I'm very patient. That's the clinical in me, though, with
Yeah.
with people. So I'm very patient, and sometimes, when I have those conversations, and I'm gonna use myself as an example, there were times where I would be so involved in the community
Mhm.
aspect that that I did miss home. I was
Yeah.
there, I was present, and I was active, but it was more attention that I needed to pay.
Yeah.
And so I just sought wise counseling, and the best advice that I got is you got to find a balance.
Mhm.
You know, you got to find a balance because uh, your home is God, family,
Right.
nation,
Right.
right? And so, for me personally, I just had to find a balance, learning how to delegate
Mhm.
responsibilities, learning not to try to do everything myself.
Yeah.
And I think you can attest, when you passionate, you think you can do it by
Mhm.
yourself, right? Because nobody has to encourage you to do it. You see it and you get it done. But now I'm learning how to delegate responsibilities, let other people lead in certain areas where they have more information or a better talent in that particular area.
Yeah.
So yeah, you just got to find a balance, and you can't solve every problem. I say go after the problems that you have a firm solution for.
Mhm.
So I
Yeah.
think that works best for me.
Cool. Let's switch gears a little bit. In
Cool.
this season of your life, what are you most curious about?
What am I most curious about? A lot of things. Um, I'm optimistic. I'm excited to see where life goes for me.
Mhm.
Um, as it relates to trying to be a community man,
Mhm.
I'm interested to see where that goes. I'm finding myself more interested in arts.
Mm.
The creative side of things.
Yeah.
So I think I'm curious about how artistic I'll be moving forward in the
Okay.
future. I've kind of put my artistry on the back burner
Yeah.
because I've been so busy with prison reform and work and family that my creativity is kind of suffered a little bit.
Mhm.
But I think with the work that I do,
Mhm.
it gives me more content to speak on whenever I do become creative.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you mentioned the prison reform.
Mhm.
Right. And I know a lot of people can write those that are in the prisons off, right? They
Hmm.
did a bad thing, they don't matter, right? What are you learning as you're doing the work?
Especially with men that are incarcerated, I have a passion for them because a lot of them, um, they made their mistake, and I can't speak to all, but a lot of them
Mhm.
made their mistake in Islam, we call Jahalil. They made their mistakes in a state of ignorance,
Mm.
you know,
Mhm.
rather it's societal, rather it's habits
Yeah.
or trying to get something quick and fast. I've had so many stories of men that just was in the wrong place at the wrong time and did something,
Yeah.
but they're still human beings and they can be reformed, you know. I think a lot of times we make them. Sometimes they can't be reformed with what we've always used.
Mm.
They need something else, and so that's why when you look at the Nation of Islam, we have a track record of taking men that the society didn't know what to do with them,
Mhm.
and making those men vanguards for their community. And it started with what you said, giving them a thorough knowledge of who they are,
Mhm.
and giving them something to live for bigger than themselves.
Yeah.
And I have the privilege of having brothers that's been around me that's been in prison for years, and you see them now and you can't even tell that they've ever been,
Mhm.
so prison reform means a lot to me. When I visit with the guys, I see them enthusiastic about life and the work that we're trying to do in the community. They do it in prison.
Yeah.
They go to the brother that's got 5 years and they use themselves as an example to say you can still get education, you can still take care of your children, you can still take care of your mother, you still have to be the person that provides guidance to their family, and they're doing that. And so on the back of our newspaper, one of the points that Elijah Muhammad made is all of those that are in the federal prison, the Muslims, that we'll take them, give them to us.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Come
let them out,
on.
give them to us. We'll
Mm.
take care of them.
That
You
I
know,
love that.
yeah.
I love that. Why do you think people are afraid to listen deeply to those who are different or who have made mistakes?
Why do I think they're hesitant?
Yeah.
Some of us just want to be self-taught.
Hmm.
You know, one of the things I think that the young people can start doing is don't try to learn everything on your own.
Yeah.
God has blessed people to come before you to give you an example of that. And that's what the organizations do. Some of us that didn't have fathers or grandfathers or great grandfathers, you get to sit in a room with men of different age groups and they can tell you about life and what life has in store for you. And so that's something that I do all the time. I remember it's brother Lindsay. He said, "What do you see in her?" I said, "I see men sitting up against the wall." He said, "Doing what?"
Hmm.
I'm like, "Waiting on the meeting." He said, "No, they're dying, brother."
Hmm.
And what he was saying is that as we're sitting here, we're leaving, we're on our way out.
Hmm.
We're older, we've been here, we've touched these realms, and so we have to leave what we built to you younger brothers.
Yeah.
And so this is an opportunity for us to see the dedication that they put in to make sure that we have these organizations. And so when he said that, it brought a lot to my mind. And what it really brought to my mind is, um, I don't play with it, brother,
Hmm.
because you'll lose it.
Yeah.
There's many communities that have had organizations and things, and they lose it.
Yeah.
So anything that you add to your life, you got to also add to your list of things that you got to maintain and keep maintenance of. So with the friendships that I have to do maintenance on that,
Mm.
the relationships, the organizations, and that's why reading is so important.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I
try
love
not to
that.
add to my maintenance list.
Yeah, I love that. I just told someone in a previous episode how important it is. We're giving gifts, right?
Yeah.
And you gotta do something. And I think we talked about this,
Mm,
right? You gotta put in some work on
hmm.
with those gifts. Like there's things that you need to do in order to make those gifts be all that they are supposed to be,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
And so, whether that's reading, whether that's going to an educational class, whatever that is, you need to put in the work to make sure that you're cultivating
Mm,
that gift and it's able to flourish and be
yeah.
all that it's supposed to be in you,
I
right?
agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What kind of man do you hope young Black boys and or future leaders see you when they look at you?
I just want to be a brother that tried.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think too highly of myself. Like I said, anything that I am, I just give all praise to Allah. And I just want to be humble, God fearing, but I want them to see that I tried,
Yeah.
you know, because as small as my story is, I did come from the ghetto.
Mhm.
I did have my inputs in the gang culture.
Yeah.
I did graduate high school at 20, almost 21 years old, right? But I did go to college. I did. get 2 degrees,
Hmm.
you know. And so I just want them to see that I tried, and that if their story aligns with mine, and if they find themselves in a particular situation that I made it out of, then maybe they can use some of the things that I used to
Yeah.
help to navigate themselves through that. So when they see my name, I just want them to see that I was a brother that tried. So when I go to Langston, actually this was recently, and they said, because I'm in, I was blessed to get to the Hall of Fame, and they were doing the Hall of Fame rings, and they said, so what name do we put on this ring? Should we put Mario Macatro? Because this X thing is just, it looks kind of odd, is what I got.
Mm,
And I was like, no, you could put, because Ibrahim Jalo didn't win, I was
yeah.
still Mario.
Yeah.
I said, just put, and she said, you know what, I respect it because I know what it means. I said, yes, ma'am. It looks odd to you guys because you may not know what it means, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But the Makatra would be more odder. Put
Mm,
the X on there. She said, I respect it. I'll put the X on there. So, and I really appreciate my social circles. When I made this change,
mm-hmm.
it was difficult for a lot of them. They like, I mean, you've been praying 5 times a day, like, okay, you got to stop again. But as time, I think what happened is I learned to really respect them because they started addressing me
Mm-hmm.
different.
Yeah.
They started calling me Jalo.
Yeah.
Even my mother started calling me Jalo.
Yeah.
And it was a Facebook post, excuse me, that she put for me, and she said, she said Allah,
Mm.
and she's a Christian woman,
Yeah.
and she said, "May Allah bless you, son," and I said, "Praise be to Allah."
Oh.
Yeah, yeah,
Listen, and that was the reason why I really wanted to have this conversation. It's okay to believe what you
yeah,
believe, but just have respect for others
yeah,
and what they believe, right? You don't
yeah.
have to believe it. You don't
Right.
have to take it on as your own, but just giving space and creating a room for people to be okay with being them,
Yeah.
right? And just respecting that. I think that's the
Hmm.
most important thing,
Yeah.
right? What I want to ask you now is what do you want to normalize for the next generation, especially when it comes to masculinity, emotional intelligence, and or empathy?
Normalize being married.
Come on, speak on it,
You know,
because that's not a thing
it's,
right
it's
now.
not easy.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's not easy, but it provides you with, that's the fine tuning for when you go out there in the world,
Mm-hmm.
because your spouse is going to make sure that you go out in the world a certain way, and
Hmm.
they're able to tell you the things that you may need to correct. And you also, I mean, if you can't be patient with your wife or your husband, how you going to be patient with the people?
Mm-hmm.
If you, how you gonna pour into people that don't know you, and then you're not pouring into the person that do know
Yeah.
you. So I think, especially for men, I think that you just normalizing being married. Most of the men that I hang around are married.
Yeah.
You know, so there's a universal discipline that we're trying to attain.
Mm-hmm.
So for example, I was in a community with the Muslims, and we were having a conversation. Something had happened, and it was a group of sisters that had came, and the people were waiting to see if our eyes were going to drop, if we were going to look at their adornments, right? And so, and it wasn't like these sisters were looking for any attention at
Yeah.
all.
Yeah.
So those are our sisters, we love them, but they looked at our eyes to see if there was any weakness in that moment, and none of us turned our heads.
Hmm.
And so they were like,
Yeah.
they respected it, what I'm saying? But that's one thing, the community, they don't bother us at all,
Yeah.
because they see us a lot.
Yeah.
We're in the apartments. We're at I did the rally
Mm-hmm.
with the Hebrew Israelite brothers. Shout out to the Hebrew Israelite brothers
Yes.
in Oklahoma City. We did a peace walk with them,
Mm-hmm.
and just to be on one accord
Yeah.
was beautiful. And that's one thing that we did speak on, is that brothers, go home,
Mm.
go take care of your families.
Yeah.
Let that sister give you time enough to grow into your best self, and you give her time to grow up into her best self,
Mm.
because life is short.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And not everybody that hurts you do it intentionally.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just life.
Yeah.
And so you
I
gotta have patience.
that part. And I think it's a beautiful thing. Again, just to hear the respect
Yeah.
in the tone that you have when it comes to sisters,
Yeah.
right? And I gotta ask this, and this may be the ignorance in me. I don't know. I've always been curious
Hmm.
why, as you say, the sisters
Hmm.
wear what they wear,
Sure.
right? And do they have to? What is that? Please break that down for me.
Sure. So the hijab, the nation, we wear a certain kind of way, and most communities do. But it's really just to show the level of respect that they have for themselves,
Yeah.
really. If I had two pieces of candy and I threw one on the floor and it was open, and I threw one on the floor that was covered, which one would you want to have?
Mm.
You know? And
Mm.
so we know, for example, that the Quran speaks that uh it tells men to lower their gaze. There's a natural attraction between men and women.
Right.
It's naturally going to be there. But sometimes the enemy of us will undress us, right? And then we'll fall for our lower nature. And so with the women, they cover themselves to let the world know that they're not of this world. And so they cover themselves also to show high respect for themselves and for their families and their husbands as well. And so I've never seen a man run behind a woman with a head covered. It's something about the beauty of a woman that that tends to be the weakness to the human side of man. So the women cover themselves to let the world know that they're set apart and that they belong to God. And so that keeps them protected, because these men, when they see them, they know that all women, but these women in particular in this moment, these women are due respect. So
I love that. I love that. Now, listen, I've always had that question in me, like, why do they? But I respect that.
yeah,
I
and do they
do.
have to? Yeah, I said yes. I mean, because that's what God
Yeah.
said, that the women that were around Jesus had their head covered,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it's not just in Islamic communities; it's in many communities.
Mm-hmm.
But more importantly, just teaching. If I could speak to this for the sister, just learning the beauty of being modest
Mm.
and learning the trouble you keep yourself out of when you don't allow yourself to be attracted in a certain way.
Yeah.
When a man has to look at your mind now,
Mm-hmm.
and then what kind of security does it give for a man that has a wife that when she's out of his presence, that she keeps herself covered, because that's not for the world. You see?
Mm.
And so the older I get, or the younger I get, I'm gonna say that.
Yeah.
The younger I get, I start realizing the value of the covering.
Mm-hmm.
I respect it.
Yeah.
Because I don't want no man running behind my daughters.
Right.
And you paying attention to the beauty that God gave her, but then you're not paying attention to her mind.
Mm-hmm.
You're not really trying to get to know her. You've minimized her to an object, and I think that that's something that we're taught that we're coming out of that, because that has destroyed us as a people.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Let me ask this, because I know somebody on the other side of this camera or mic is going to say or possibly think, you know, I heard him say, if I don't wear these things,
Mhm.
right, then I'm giving permission for someone to do something to me or
Mhm.
treat me a certain way. What
Yeah.
would you say about that?
Stop it.
Yeah.
I'm just
Okay.
kidding.
Okay.
Nah, so it's not and the only reason I'm saying this to say is that you're just letting the world know that I'm a woman of God.
Mm,
I'm a woman. Not that women that do the opposite that are not,
right.
but you just keep away the unnecessary attention from men that you don't need.
Because it's a natural thing.
It's a
Like you
natural
said.
attraction.
Yeah, it's a
Same
natural
thing
attraction.
for men.
Yeah.
It's the same. There are certain things men where it may not be, in that particular way, but there's certain things that men do for mostly for women's attention.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I understand it, but the only thing that I'm saying is that as women that represent God,
Mm-hmm.
women that are spiritual, women that are trying to be modest,
Mm-hmm.
they dress a certain kind of way. They
Gotcha.
don't have to, because we don't do the face covers in the
Right.
nation. We don't
Right.
do all of that, but if you're somewhere and, you don't have the protection of a man with you, then it's best that you cover your adornment so that a man don't disrespect you, that a man don't think that you're something easy, he's something that you can play with, because that's not true.
Okay. I
Mhm.
wanted to clear that up because
Yeah.
I know somebody was going to be thinking
Oh
that.
yeah.
So I just want to make sure that we have that clear. Okay.
Yeah.
What's something that you're still learning about yourself right now?
Something I'm still learning about myself. I have a lot of children.
Okay. How many children do you
I
have?
got 5.
5 children.
And
That's not a.
it's not? Oh, okay, then cool.
know.
They've been telling me otherwise.
Well,
Yeah, I
yeah.
got 5.
Now, let me say this. There are people that's like, that may be a lot, but I'll be
Yeah.
honest with you. To me,
Nah,
I
it's
don't
not a
think that's a
lot.
lot. Now, if you would
Nah.
have said 10 or 12, then
Yeah.
I would have been like, now
Okay,
listen.
now I got 5. Yeah,
Yeah.
but trying to be what I need to be to all of them. They got
Yeah.
different personalities,
Yeah.
My son has his own personality. I got 4 little girls that I have to give attention.
No.
And then, so I think I'm still learning to be all of me for all of them.
Yeah.
You know, I like now with my daughters, I can tell what type of man that you need based on what you require from me.
Oh,
So
that's
there are some
good.
that I have to be more gentle with. All of them gentle, but this one needs more hugs and attention. You know,
Mm-hmm.
this one just wants me to be present. You know, so yeah, I kind of learned that, but I'm just learning this role. That's my first responsibility as a husband and as a father, right? And so I'm learning those roles and how to transition when necessary based on age,
Yeah.
their ages. You know, allowing a little bit more, keeping the boundaries on certain things, and then also learning how to communicate with them. My
Yeah.
son, when he was younger, I think we were in the grocery store, and I think I may have said something to him, but I may have said it loud. And he said, "I would have done it. You didn't have to yell. I would have done it anyway." And so when he said it, I was like,
Mm.
"Well, that makes sense." I said, "Okay,
Yeah.
I gotta start adjusting my communication
Yeah.
with him because he's smart. You know, he's always been a bright kid, but now he's like, I heard you. You
Yeah.
didn't, you know." So he's
Yeah.
using me on me, if that
Yeah.
make any sense. So yeah, I
How
would
old is
say
he?
he's 10,
Okay.
and I love to see when I go to he goes to Millwood. So
Okay.
every time I go, he's always on a program
Mm,
to speak.
a leader.
And it kind of took me aback for a second. I'm like, son, how did you get that? He's like, they always ask me.
Hmm.
And so I kind of had a moment like I can see myself in him,
Mm-hmm.
you know, how he'll get the crowd going. And I admire that about him, you
Yeah.
know. So I see why fathers get that glaze in their eye when they see their son doing something that they started. So they've been blessed to always put him on the program to speak. And he's very articulate too. Yeah.
That's amazing. Listen, when there's a great man or a great
Hmm.
woman, I'm always like, who's on the other
Other
side
side.
of you? And
Yeah.
so please tell us about your beautiful wife and
Sure.
just what she means to you.
Sister Lakira. We
Yeah.
call her Sister Lakira. She's from Dallas. We met in college. Um, she's a member of Zeta. So when I met her, the thing that caught me is she just was not a woman that was always seen. She was
Mm-hmm.
beautiful, but she wasn't always looking for attention.
Mm-hmm.
She'd go to a concert and leave after.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't see her mingling, and I said, "Man, this sister's beautiful." So one day I got opportunity to meet her, and by this time I'm on my Muslim trip.
Mm-hmm.
I got kufis and copper on. I'm like, I'm Malcolm, right?
Mm-hmm.
But she really thought that it was inspiring, you know. And so we got pregnant early on, and then we had to make the decision: either we're going to get married, or we're going to try to do this thing separate. And we both said that at least let's try. At least we'll be able to tell our children we tried,
Yeah.
you know. And so
Yeah.
we did, and we used the teachings from Islam to keep us leveled and keep us on how to deal with the difficulty. So this year make 11 years, and she didn't initially join the nation
Okay.
with me. You know, it required me to be away from home a lot because I'm in a community.
Right.
But after a while, she started studying it on her own. You know, I felt that it wasn't I didn't force it on her. I just had to do what I had to do. So I made sure to articulate to her why I needed to do it.
Yeah.
But then after some time, she started picking up the books on her own. And we were at a meeting one day, and they said, we have a new sister, and they said Lakira X. And I was shocked because I didn't know she was reading it.
Oh, wow.
And she had went home and she started
Yeah.
reading. It was one time where I went on the corner on 23rd and I was selling a newspaper.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very difficult because people roll the window up. They act like they don't hear you.
Mm-hmm.
They want to argue with you.
Mm-hmm.
They'll drive by and scream Jesus. Did Jesus tell you to do that?
Oh, wow.
Oh yeah. And if you don't have thick skin, it can really affect you.
Yeah.
But I'm not out there of myself.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to get out my own way,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And so one time she was sitting in the car and she watched.
Mm-hmm.
And when we got home, I didn't complain. I ate,
Mm-hmm.
you know, was reading, and she like, so you're not gonna say nothing about what they
What they was
because
saying?
they don't even know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And I was like, you know, they just don't know.
Yeah.
You know, this is new to them. Islam is new to them.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't grow up with anybody like this in their family. So I understand it, you know. And so that she came in and she's been my greatest support for sure.
Wow.
You have to. When I did the march, she was supposed to be there.
Yeah.
But she had to stay home with the children.
Yeah.
And she was like, but she prepared me for it. Like, you got it. Make it happen. Allah's with you. And so I made it happen. And we came back and celebrated the wins.
I love that. Congratulations on
Thank
11
you.
years.
Yeah.
Listen, marriage is definitely work, and you have to be intentional with loving each other and deciding to do this thing every day. So I know what that looks like. My husband and I celebrated 15 years this year,
Congrats.
and I love that man.
Yeah.
I listen. He allows me to be me,
Yeah.
and I respect him. And
Mm-hmm.
so we just have that mutual respect. So I know what that's
Yeah.
like, when you find somebody and
Mm-hmm.
they help to make you better,
For sure.
right? They empower you. So kudos to y'all. Okay. What does freedom look like for a man like you?
Freedom. Freedom to me is discipline.
Mm,
The reason I say that is, I thank God I didn't get everything I asked for.
mm,
I would have destroyed myself.
mm,
So as long as and that's what justice, in these type of things mean so much, because I don't want to add a degree of suffering to nobody that they
mhm,
already got to deal with. So for me, freedom is being disciplined, taking the guidelines that Allah says that are permissible, and then living righteous. And now I understand in my age, now I understand the value of just being righteous, not trying to wear a mask or anybody, just be your
mhm.
authentic self. And so yeah, I would say discipline. Discipline is the key thing that I'm working on, is to learn how to be, and that's just another word with civilized.
Yeah.
Yeah, treating people how I want to be treated, doing what I need that's necessary to make sure that I'm a voice for my generation of men to elevate the community that I'm responsible for,
Yeah.
but at the same time, knowing my limits
Yeah.
as well. So yeah, and boundaries are healthy.
They are.
Yeah, they have. So God, if Allah say don't, I don't. We look at it like don't do that, but He's like, what's on the other side of that? Who hurts you? Who
Mm,
hurts when you do that?
yeah.
Okay, you sell these drugs to pay your bills. What does that do to the family of the person that get addicted to them?
Yeah.
You know, and so yeah, I just say discipline, and you'd be surprised with who sees you
Mhm.
and how you inspire them. And I've had some of my friends back home, and they say we see it and
Mm,
we appreciate you for it.
yeah.
Yeah, because I think everybody's trying to find out what's this life thing. They trying to figure this life thing out.
Yeah.
And a lot of us don't have a lot of original thoughts, because you can just go on Google and go on
That
Chat
part. Chat
GBT, and you can
GBT.
and
Yeah.
tell it to think for you.
Yeah.
We don't know how to think for ourselves. And so I think that, just being disciplined, knowing where to lend my attention, and knowing where not to lend it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Listen, I told you when your name came up,
Mhm.
I stalked your page, okay, in the most healthiest of ways, y'all, I promise. And I was just inspired.
I
That's what
appreciate
it
it.
was. It was inspired on how you move. You're not a loud man. Like
Mm-mm.
even your presence in
Yeah.
in the room today, like you're just real chill and
Yeah.
just mellow, and you can definitely feel that,
Praise to
right?
Allah.
And so I love the work that you were doing, and I was
Yeah.
like, I gotta have him
I
on.
appreciate it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I just appreciate you being you, and it's in the most genuine
Yeah, for
way,
sure.
right? So with that, I'm gonna start wrapping up. If we all pause long enough to truly listen, what do you believe we'd hear?
If we all just took a second and just listened, I think that we all would have to admit that we're not the best version of ourselves,
Mm,
that we can do better and be
mm,
better. And that's what it is every day for me. I try not to let nothing keep me from being happy,
yeah.
because we can turn on the news and see so many people whose lives are contrary to the things that. So I just learned how to be patient and be grateful. But I think every day all of us should strive to be appreciative of what we have,
Mhm.
and don't be afraid to learn.
Yeah.
I know when you were talking, you were mentioning about, the Quran. I still study from the Bible heavily, and I use those teachings. But then I also know that when I'm dealing with my friends, or when I'm dealing with people, I don't always come with the books and the scriptures. I just take whatever guidance I give it to them, and then I put it in a way that they can palate.
Mm,
But sometimes just being in the room is enough. I
mhm,
sit with men, and they know that I'm Muslim,
mm,
and but now that I'm in their presence, they can ask the intimate questions.
mm.
So you don't eat pork? Like, nah, I don't eat pork, brother. Uh, y'all don't blow stuff up? You're like, nah, I don't blow stuff up, brother.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that just being around men, and they see, because it's one thing you see a Muslim on TV, right?
Yeah.
But when you actually are sitting with a brother that
Yeah.
believes the same, and you can't tell the difference,
Mm-hmm.
It's like, man, I appreciate it. So now they buy the newspapers now. They buy the newspapers. They support it. They, they think, and I wouldn't be anything if I didn't have it. Everything on my page that I promote, it all comes from what the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan has given me, which is civilization and a sound mind to what's going on in the world. So I'm not just concerned about what's going on here. I'm looking at what's going on throughout the world and how are men addressing these problems. And if they're not addressing these problems, then from the small nucleus that I have, how can I address these problems? Because at any moment it can knock at your door. So I would just implore all of us to just keep studying and keep seeking knowledge.
Yeah.
Wherever you find it.
I love that. What is right now in probably your favorite place that you've ever traveled to?
My favorite place, I had the opportunity to go to West Africa. That's why I actually found my tribe, and what I liked about West Africa is that it's just the peace. That's what attracted me to Islam. I was talking to a brother in the Adhan that the call to prayer came on, and he just walked away from the conversation. And I'm like, he just walked away, and I seen him, he was washing his hands and his feet, and I'm like, this is interesting. And they all stood in lines, hundreds, and bowed to God and put their head to the ground. Now, I'm like, this is very interesting.
Yeah.
But I didn't say anything, and it wasn't until I went to Kunta Kinte's village and I met one of his family members, and she said, you can throw a log in the water, it'll float, but it'll never be a crocodile. And it took me years to figure out what that meant. But what she basically was saying, because she seen that I was Fulani from my features, my tribe, she was basically saying no matter what happened to you, what they done to you, who you are will always show up in your face. And so through all of the transatlantic and all of that, what happened what happened to us as a people, my tribe was still able to identify me when they seen me. And so that's why I proudly, the elders gave me that name.
Yeah.
But before I got there, they would say Jalo. Jalo. And I said, man, Jalo, what is this thing? And they said, we Jalo. And they said, they were arguing like what they called me. And they said, he's Jalo. Give him Jalo. They gave me Jalo. So if you go on Facebook, you type in Jalo, it's many of us. I'm not the only one.
Wow.
I just highlighted it for us as a black man in America. But if you look, you see most of them in Africa, they got the name Jalo.
Jalo. Let me say this for me. One thing that I yearn for is to know where I truly came from.
Yeah, for sure.
Right? And so to hear that moment for you is just like, oh my God, like I aspire to have that.
And my tribe, 99% of my tribe is full of Fulani, they're Muslims. So I had to look into it because I asked the question. So you never had, and it's not that they don't believe in Jesus.
Right.
They just didn't have it the way that we have it, And so when I got to studying it and studying them, I realized that this is my nature to be righteous. And I started studying it, and my family came along with it. My wife converted to Islam. And it's been a beautiful experience for us. We still go to church. We still cry when I told the storm, come on.
Yeah.
But we just Muslims, we just trying to be righteous.
Yeah. Okay, so you said you still go to church.
Yeah, we go to church. Yeah, but if I'm invited, I'm there. I was in church a couple of weeks ago, and I still enjoy it.
Yeah.
I love it.
Okay.
Because I understand it.
Okay.
Yeah, I understand. It's kind of
that you just threw me I completely threw me for a loop. So you still go to church,
I'll go. Yeah.
But you're Muslim. Okay.
Alhamdulillah, Muslim, but I'll still go.
Interesting.
And it doesn't bother me to go because I'm not there to judge them.
Yeah.
I take, and if it's something that they say that may not align, that don't bother me.
Yeah.
Not say very little that they say that I don't agree with.
Yeah.
So yeah, I go, I clap, I do all of that. But I'm a student.
Yeah.
Of Elijah Muhammad. And I'm with Mr. Louis Farrakhan. Mr. Farrakhan goes to churches.
Okay.
Yeah, we go speak. We do a lot of community service together. And that's where people get confused because they think you'll separate yourself.
Yeah.
And some of us, we do that, but that's just because we got something new.
Yeah.
We learning how to adjust ourselves to it too.
Yeah.
I've made those mistakes, and every time I come around, I got I never was disrespectful. But what happens is if I found something that I'm enthused about, of course I want to share it.
Yeah.
So now as I've gotten older and I've been able to maintain these friendships, I've learned to just be myself, and that's enough. So I just
Hmm.
be myself. So
Wow. I just learned a lot in
yeah.
just that one piece. Let me say this for anyone out there that, like me,
Mhm.
would love to know truly where we came from. Because we
Sure.
hear all the time in teachings we were slaves, we were
For
this,
sure.
but
Absolutely.
there was a history before
Way
that,
before that. Yeah.
right? And so, what would you say to them? How would they start to really truly understand who they are, where they came from?
Right. I would say you just got to start studying. We've had many historians that have come from us. John Henry Clark, Sheikh Anta Diop.
Hmm.
Stolen Legacy is a great book.
Okay.
Message to the Black Man is a great book. But the goal is that just be intentional. Allah will guide you,
Mm.
because you can't be your best self if you don't know who you are.
That
You're
part.
just being the best functional self that you need to be in the situation that you're in,
Hmm.
but you don't know yourself.
Hmm.
And when you don't know yourself, you're going to always have a void,
Mm.
and you're going to try to fill it in with everything. And sometimes you feel that you overflow your cup with religion,
Hmm.
you know, but you just have to search and study. It's so our history prior, you would have to strap yourself to a seat if you really knew who you were. I'm serious,
Yeah.
because it did that for me.
Yeah.
Our connection to God divinely, it'll make sense on why certain things happen to you
Yeah.
if you know.
I
Yeah.
I'm excited. I'm gonna be honest with you. I did one of those blood test things, and I
Hmm.
don't truly always like fully
Understand it.
believe that,
Yeah.
or necessarily understand it. I think mine was like Congo and West
Sure.
Indies
For
and
sure.
all these things. But one thing that I have always yearned to
Hmm.
do is to go over to Africa to truly
Yeah.
learn who I am. And maybe
Hmm.
we didn't come from there. I don't know.
Yeah. For sure.
I just don't know what all to necessarily
Yeah.
believe. But I feel like that's where I need to start.
Yeah.
And so that is one thing that I'm like in my soul, like I feel prompted to do.
Yeah.
Just right now, me and planes ain't friends,
Yeah.
okay? Just
Yeah.
with
Yeah. I
everything
got
going
you.
on. So I'm like, when am I gonna go?
Yeah.
Okay. But I truly thank you for sharing
Yeah.
all of
I think
that.
you should. I
Yeah.
think you should go, and just remember that God will guide you.
Hmm.
He'll guide you.
Yeah.
You're not. You. A lot of us, we live as if there's no creator.
Hmm.
There is a creator,
Right.
and he's very much concerned about you,
Yeah.
and he'll bring people into your life through your path to remind you of that.
Yeah.
And so, like I said, my journey didn't start with me. My father yearned for these things.
Mhm.
Some of the things he was able, like Rastafarianism, he
Mhm.
was able to find some of it. In that he didn't, he planted a seed,
Mhm.
and I carried it on. So he said, son, well, I don't know if I can be a Muslim. I'm like, I'm you and you Muslim. Yeah.
Yeah.
And my children are Muslim. So if I'm you and you're me, and they are us, then you're already a Muslim in the future because your grandchildren are Muslims.
Yeah.
So yeah, just start studying, allow guide you, and don't run away. Any of you all, don't run away from what you find,
Yeah.
because sometimes it'll have to realign certain things that you've known before. But uh Malcolm spoke a lot on that,
Mhm.
you know,
Yeah.
that you have to. That's why it was important that we educate ourselves,
Yeah.
because you'll be miseducated outside of yourself. Yeah.
I have to hit on this. In that moment when you found out where you came from, who you were, what did that feel like? Was there a certain level of confidence? What explain to me? Like I'm sitting here like, oh, I want that.
Well, like my name,
Yeah.
I loved my name,
Mhm.
but I had to part ways with it.
Mm.
Yeah. Like
Yeah.
my name isn't Makatra. That's the name that was
Your
adopted.
government, like
Yeah,
your
yeah,
okay.
that's my slave name. That was the
Yeah.
name that my fathers had from the plantation. They only had one name anyway,
Yeah.
so they took the last name. If you were going somewhere, you would have to tell where you coming from. I'm from the Makatra plantation. So
Mm.
then when all of that ended, you kept the name and you kept it. But now that I've reached a point where I want to be self-identified, it's like I've had it. We've had it. It's time for me to identify myself.
Mhm.
And so, like I said, Mario X, and I told them that X stands for the unknown, right? It stands for the past that we're not aware of.
Yeah.
But X in mathematics also brings or adds value to something as
Mhm.
well. So I was blessed to get a name from my tribe. Ibrahim means father of many, and also in the Bible, in the Quran, it means friend of God. So that friendship or being a friend is my quality. That is my attribute. Ibrahim is my attribute,
Yeah.
and that's why I'm a good friend, and I strive to be a good friend. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. And lastly,
Mhm.
what's one truth you're holding tight to right now?
One truth
One truth.
that I'm holding tight to,
Yeah.
that there is no God but Allah,
Mm,
and that Muhammad is his messenger.
mm,
There's nothing else. I just have to hold tight to that. And I say that because everything that I am has been from what Islam has brought into my life. I was I could dress well. You could put good clothes on a mannequin, but the heart
mm.
don't beat, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, yeah. It's giving me the proper outlook on life for life to be beautiful, even with all the stuff that's going on in the world.
Hmm.
I know I'm not in control. I'm just doing my part, and I'm happy for that. And I'm just happy that I got a chance to experience it. So
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you for
I
being
appreciate you.
here.
I feel honored. I'm just striving. I
Now, is
appreciate you
there
though.
anything that you want to share? Any question you want to ask before we wrap up?
No, I would love to, if this inspired anyone, I would love to hear from them. You can
Yeah.
find me on Instagram at I am Jalo. I would love to hear from you all. Any questions or comments, and anybody that's interested in learning about Islam, you're more than welcome to reach out to me, and anything that I have, I'll share.
Yeah. Well, thank you so
Thank you so
much.
much.
I
Peace.
appreciate it. Listen, who are you? Who do you strive to be? Those are the questions that I ask you. And as you continue on this journey of just finding out who you are, learning about yourself, be open to what others believe, what they think, and know that just because they have differences doesn't mean that it changes who you are and who you want to be. But be open minded and stay real and true to yourself. Until next time, see you in the real